Hello and welcome to stage 15 of this year's Giro d'Italia. This is a 169 kilometre stage running from Busto Arsizio to Lecco. 4 categorised climbs including a first category midway through the stage. We're now on this final climb to the finish. Right now I'm pushing around about 300 watts up here, so just a steady kind of tempo. The guys that come up here, it's going to be around about 20-minute climb and they'll be pushing around about 450 watts to somebody of my weight. And the magic number everyone talks about is watts per kilo. And these days, you want to be one of the best GC riders, one of the overall contenders for a 3-week race, you need to be capable of pushing around 6.5 watts per kilo at the end of these stages, so after 5 hours in the saddle already. And what that watts per kilo number means is basically how much power per kilogram of body weight, because that's what you're pushing up the climbs. For a long time in cycling, riders have been so conscious about their weight, having the right diet, not carrying any excess fat, and even not carrying any excess muscles, perhaps in your upper body where you don't really need it. Because every time you put on an extra kilo, you can lose around about 3 to 6 seconds on per kilometre on a climb. Which might not sound like an awful lot. If you start to think about these riders that have lost 5, 6, 7 kilos, even more, that's a large amount of time per kilometre. That makes a huge difference if you want to challenge for the overall victory at the end of 3 weeks. Technology's come on so much in the last 10 years. They know so much more about making components with carbon. These days, a lot of the teams are having to add weights on, and it's not particularly technical or scientific. Quite often just put an old chain down the seat tube, add weights on in various positions, just to make it up to the minimum 6.8 kilos. Well, this is one of the last hairpins on the climb. We've got about 4 kilometres to go. This is obviously the crunch point of today's stage, 169 kilometres to Lecco. This is where the time gaps are going to be made, but of course there's a lot of preparation goes into the hours before and getting up to the climb in the right position. Because it's a shorter climb today, only 7 k's, not one of the really long mountains, it makes the position coming into the bottom all the more important, especially because it's 10% for the first couple of kilometres, so it's very steep compared to some of the other climbs that you might face in the Tour de France, etc. So the teams will be really helping their leaders to get into a good position. You really want to start a climb like this inside the first 30 at the very most. The factor that altitude plays in races like this is another reason why we're seeing more and more cyclists going up to altitude for training camps of 2 weeks to a month before the big races, because it gets your body accustomed to riding up at a high level with less oxygen, and one of the effects is that your body produces more of the red blood cells, which are the oxygen carrying cells, so you can arrive here and adapt better and cope better with the high altitude that you're going to experience. Cadence is kind of a self-selected thing really. You'll see different riders in the peloton pedalling at much different rates. Really just what they're comfortable with. So for example, somebody like Wiggins from Team Sky, he sits in the saddle, just spins away, quite a high cadence. That's what he's comfortable with. At the other end of the scale, somebody like Tony Martin, he just uses brute force. So in gradients like this, he wouldn't be too far off the big ring. If you're a much lower cadence, around about 75, 80 RPM, more like this, just grinding and using his full force through the pedals, slightly less souplesse, as they call it in French, than the guys that spin. One of the questions I get asked often by riders new to the sport is why we still see professional riders slipstreaming each other or slipstreaming their teammates on the mountains. And the reason is simply just because of the speed that they're going, 20 to 30 kilometres an hour on a 6 to 8% climb. There's still a benefit from sitting behind someone else, keeping out of the wind and saving your energy until that final attack.